Yeah, cool. Well,
Yeah.
thanks for agreeing to do this. Stoked.
Yeah, man. Yeah, thank you. I was pretty honored when I saw your request come through, so thank you.
Yeah, cool. So for you at the moment, it's about 6:30 in the morning there.
Just about 6:30 a.m. I usually get up at sort of 4:45 anyway. A bit of a morning routine, and so I've been up a little while yet, and just had my morning coffee. As I see you are too. Actually, you're on a red.
I've got some
Um,
red wine. It's 8:30 in the evening here. Kids have just gone to
yeah,
bed. So talk
nice.
about talk about opposite ends of the world, literally
Yeah.
and figuratively.
Hey, you got
Hmm.
some damn fine equipment behind you there, like quite organized and ready to go.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it. It's yeah, I try to keep it a little bit organized. We got it's actually everything else is just sort of squished into the corner of the room over there. It's just a pile of bikes and and other stuff. The skis are not that movable, so I thought it makes a nice it's a nice backdrop at least.
Yeah.
And we've got the freezer over there, white thing just creeping into frame. But yeah, no, it's nice to keep that's the one thing in my life that's generally quite organized. All the adventure stuff
Good. Yeah.
ready
Yeah.
to go.
I
Uh,
like it.
um, yeah, and so you're based in Sydney.
I'm in Sydney. I'm about 40 minutes out of Sydney, a little place called Cronulla, the outer suburbs of Sydney, which sits on the beaches.
Ah,
We've
Cronulla,
got,
that's where Aki's from.
yeah, a bunch of seasoned veterans and pros are from here. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
quite a roll call of uh, famous surfers and athletes, and yeah, it is a little bit like that. You still got access to the city, but there's so much room to move and
Okay.
amazing beaches. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was once in Sydney many years ago, very briefly for a sporting event back at university. But yeah, it was literally just like a week in, week out. So that was my limited experience of Australia.
How long ago?
Oh, probably literally almost 20 years ago, about 2004,
Yeah,
five-ish.
just after the Olympics.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I remember it being amazing. I mean, it was the the I mean, as South Africa, I mean, I'm obviously South African originally, living in Switzerland now. But what fascinated us at the time were all these gas barbecues all over the public parks that were just free to use. For us, this was just
Um,
absolutely mind blowing that you could just, you know, it's just there for people to use. If that was in South Africa, it would be gone within probably half an hour. You know, like,
well, they're bricked in, but I mean, I think a lot of them have been taken out, or maybe
yeah, I mean,
electrified now rather than
okay,
gas. But
yeah,
yeah, probably a bit
yeah,
changed since then.
yeah, it's a while ago. So we're just speaking as the memories pop up.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay, cool. But we'll get to that soon enough. So
yeah,
yeah, so if you don't mind, I'll get into the more formal part of the podcast, which is actually very informal. Just a couple of questions. I mean, I suppose what I'll start with quickly is what I'll generally try and do is just quickly speak through just briefly who you are, and I'll give you a chance to just either correct anything that I was made well, at least I didn't explain properly, or also just give a bit more of a background for
sure, man. Yep.
yeah. Okay, cool. So I'll kick us off.
Sweet.
Yeah, awesome. So yeah, so tonight or this morning in Australia, I'm I'm chatting to normally I would say to a good friend, but it's actually a new friend, Tyson Millar, Millar, correct? Tyson
That's
Millar.
right. Yeah.
He's based down in Sydney, Australia, in the Southern Hemisphere. We connected online via writing actually, which we'll get to soon as well. But he is a general seems to be a general just a cool dude doing a bunch of interesting stuff, doing some weather I practiced that word actually, meteorological
Meteorological,
analysis,
yeah.
meteorological. Thank you. Write-ups and summaries and analysis online, which is really, really cool. You also do photography, which obviously I can relate to, and something I actually wasn't that clued up on until probably a few years ago when I got more into skiing here in Switzerland, was skiing and winter sports in Australia, which is the last thing. Having been down there in the summer heat, would have crossed my mind that you can actually ski or snowboard in Australia. So yeah. So on that note, who is, if you would like to give us a quick background on who is Tyson Millar, and
Thanks for having us on. And I suppose it's probably best to start off in the geographical terms. I'm from Perth, Australia, initially, and which is on the west coast. And I moved over to Sydney after so much traveling. Like, I left Perth probably 25 years ago, not long after I finished school. Moved over to the east coast and actually got involved with snow sports and ski area management. I actually studied ski area management under the banner of tourism once I finished school. And we've got a number of ski resorts over here on the east coast of Australia, very small ones that probably akin to something like what would be termed a club field or like a boutique ski resort in places like Switzerland.
Okay, so quite small.
And so small. I mean, some of them, they range from 10 to 15 lifts right through to, I think Parish's, our biggest resort's probably got something like 50. Mainly surface toes, mainly pommers and nutcrackers and stuff like that. Well, platters. So mainly surface lifts, but very small industry that is vastly growing, surprisingly. But I'll get to that separately. But yeah, then I moved about and worked in aviation. So I moved throughout Australia. Aviation in the sense of ground handling. So I worked for a major outfit for Australia. The brand is Aerocare, and moved around Australia through that. Lots and lots of travel domestically. And then beyond that, moved to London, change of lifestyles, change of scenery, and worked as a tour guide in Europe, actually.
In Europe, okay.
In London, but traveling and touring throughout Europe. So I know Europe very, very intimately, both historically, not through school, but through general research for that job. It was about 6 months worth of onboarding to actually do that job, because being an Aussie touring through Europe, who mainly had Aussie clientele, still had a reason to know all the ins and outs of Europe. And did that for a couple of years along other things, and photography was the main thing after I moved on from that. And then I moved back to Oz and landed here in Sydney over 10 years ago now.
Okay.
And I mean, I've still always had a pulse, had my finger on the pulse for snow and ski area and what the snow is doing. So I've always had that love and always shared my thoughts on either online or through friends and being in the industry itself.
Okay. And since arriving back in Sydney, you just sort of picked up where you left off, or?
Once I landed back in Sydney, once I landed in Sydney, I picked up a job with a local photographer, very well-known photographer, it goes under the guise of Aquabumps, who shoots the beach every single day. We've got a gallery here in Sydney, and so I'm general manager for the gallery that operates out of Bondi, the main tourist hub of Sydney.
Yeah.
And so that's I guess the bread and butter for me, and then everything else is an ancillary add-on, whether it be backcountry skiing, hiking, surfing, all of those those things that you probably can't make much of a living out of. Do that on the end of operating a business.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. That's fascinating. Quite a fascinating journey.
Yeah.
No, I can bet you must have learned a lot and met some interesting people along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I meet interesting people every day, mainly through the tourism side of being in Bondi, working in and having lived in Bondi. But yeah, you do meet some pretty fascinating people from all over the world. But I mean, having travelled all over the world as well, it's quite easy to to meet those sort of people. But yeah, I'll also add, I'm also studying at the moment with University of Tasmania on top of that, which is studying climate science and an introduction into Antarctic marine science.
Wow.
So all undergrad stuff, but not necessarily going to take me anywhere career-wise, but just out of interest.
Yeah, so it must be. I mean, clearly, it's quite an interest for you, that field.
But yeah, the field of climate for sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that definitely comes through in your writing. I mean, it's quite it is technical in many ways, but it's also relatable. I mean, for me. It's a very, I'm not grading it. It's just for me, I find it a great balance between technical and also just being in sort of a layman's language also a little bit, which is why I enjoy following it. The modeling you put up always fine. I mean, that must take a fair bit of work to realize, to visualize, or not.
It definitely does. Way too much time, but because I've got a passion for it, I'm not considering the time. But yeah, and just to be clear, I'm not a meteorologist. I've just spent incredible amount of time researching and trying to understand a lot of the intricacies and technicalities of meteorology, whether that be physics or atmospheric science. I spent a lot of time reading research papers. Spent a lot of time digging up the most quirkiest data known to man. And I try and mold it into something that I can understand, and then communicate through my Substack to actually get that information out and be that conduit between meteorological terms and kind of the layman, the person who just wants to go ski or surf or whatever.
Yeah. Speaking of Substack, so that's obviously, I mean, one of my next questions, or one of the questions I would like to ask, or what I would like to know, is that why did you start writing on Substack? But I mean, I think I can sort of pre-guess by saying you wanted to share that knowledge and just have an outlet for all that passion and that knowledge that you wanted to share.
Yeah, so just to take it back, I've been writing online for a long time through a platform or forum known as ski.com.au, and which I actually operate as full disclosure, I operate as a moderator on that. And I've been on that.
Are the days longer in Australia than in Switzerland? Because you seem to have a lot on your plate.
A lot on my plate. Well, I mean, it just ticks along in the background. We've got a bunch of moderators, but like I say, it's like muscle memory for me. So it's not labor intensive. It's just a matter of being on there and vetting anything that comes up. But it's certainly in winter time, I do have very, very short days because I'm always trying to juggle, the keeping on top of snow and Then there's the moderating side of things, and which can be exhaustive midwinter because that's our high traffic period. But so I've always publicized online. I was spending probably way too much time for a lot of people's opinions, way too much time on those, the nitty-gritty of it. Just picking stuff out of it, which, as you point out, takes an incredible amount of time because you get it from so many different sources, and it's constantly updating. That's probably the caveat with weather modelling, is that some of the models run 4 times a day, if not more. Some of them. So you're getting a constant replenishment of information and data and observations, real time. And things change as well. So, but you can't look at the macro. You've kind of got to look at the bigger picture, the broad scale. Because if you're not looking at the broad scale, you get stuck in the nitty gritty stuff. But just back to your question, I've always published online through an online forum and through Substack, through finding Substack, which came about through just a suggestion to platform it. I've been able to kind of curve a lot of information down the route that I want to take it. On the forums, they tend to go off on discussions and deviations of that. So Substack's it's simply a way for me to publish my own thoughts on what the current specs are.
And have a bit more control, like you were saying, to take in the direction that you want to take it, and publish things that you want to publish without necessarily adhering to a certain protocol or etc.
That's exactly right, Cornelius. Like it's your ability to be yourself, and publish what you want. I am mindful. It's probably one of the most things I'm mindful about when I am writing it is trying to bridge that gap between the technical chat and what the general consumer wants to hear, like the skier or the snowboarder or the surfer, or all I want to do is understand when it's going to be bluebird and blower power, which is, as you probably know, is a bit of a fallacy in most days. But it can be tricky. Like there's so much data in there, and I guess that's where I've sort of learned to kind of work out how to bring it not so technical. So I'm certainly open to criticism on that, because I am mindful of it. But
I think writing online, I think you'll find it's hard to please everyone. So again, like for me, I can relate a lot to that, because that's essentially why I started writing on Substack, is because coming from having my own photography business in South Africa for more than a decade before moving to Switzerland, and even then having I'm a professional photographer by trade originally. Well, before that, I was actually a qualified marine biologist with a master's in genetic research. But that's about
previous life.
That's also about 20 years ago. But then my photography has always been a passion of mine since the mid-90s, since high school. And that was actually during my master's degree in science that I sort of thought I'm going to make the jump and try and take that full time. Anyway, to cut a long story short, so even with like you might know as well, so when you're a professional photographer or practicing, I think in any field really, you often you're doing so much client work, and in many times throughout the year or throughout the years, trying to keep your head above water, the personal projects that you do sometimes make time for sort of build up, but you actually never get it out. And that was always in the back of my mind to finally actually just, because the reason you do it is because you're passionate about it, and what adds more value for me on a personal level is also to be able to share it. And even though I'm a little bit web savvy, like I'm sure you are, the whole, finding the time to build up a WordPress website, do a domain, get the hosting, which wouldn't be a problem. It would just be extra time. Then I researched options and then eventually landed on Substack as basically just a plug and play option. And I thought, well, for me, that takes a lot of the back end work off my plate. I can just focus on what I want to get out there, and see what happens along the way on the journey.
Yeah, totally. And it's a weird conundrum and paradox having to have a passion that you feel like you spend so much time kind of researching. And I'm talking in terms of like, what website do I go to? What, how do I best publish this? And it does. And do they, integrate? Do they actually work together? It's so hard. And whilst I don't consider myself tech savvy, it's like I've got my, I understand how to put it all together, but sometimes it's so complex, and you'd rather just farm it out, right? Just throw $2,000 at it and just kind of get it done, because you just don't have time for it if your passion project. And that's always been my thing as well. Like I've got a website with my photography on it, and it's a lot of the time it just sits there because like I just don't have the time, and probably as I've kind of alluded to, there's not enough hours in the day for everything that I'm doing. And that's just one passion project that goes on in the background. So it is tricky to kind of find that balance.
And in that sense, that's where Substack takes a lot of that back end work for me with my page, which I really, really enjoy. Even though in my research, one of the platforms also considered is a platform called Ghost. Have you heard of that? Or considered that?
No.
Ghost.org. It's a bit of a tangent, but so it's actually it was an indie project that started probably also about 10, 15 years ago, with a guy who was just also fed up with the convolutedness of WordPress, and started this just plain vanilla blogging platform. And it was very basic in the beginning, literally just text posts, and now it's this full-on creator economy book publisher platform, similar to Substack. Not similar, very similar but different. But
it looks similar. It's just probably more customizable, is it?
A little bit more customizable, and you pay. Instead of taking a cut, you pay depending on your usage. So it's about 10, 12, 15 US a month. And they don't take any cut of the revenue. But the reason that I did a bit of a trial with it, and the reason I actually ended up going with Substack, besides saving a bit on the upfront monthly cost, is just there's a little bit more of a, at least initially, I just thought, I had no really idea about newsletter or a blog and getting it out. Just getting it out on a weekly or monthly or whenever you decide to publish newsletter. And there seemed to be more of a established community around Substack at the time. And I thought, okay, I'm going to start on one and see how it goes. I can always move. But anyway, just as an aside, it crossed my mind while we were talking about Substack.
Yeah, because I came across Medium the other day as well, which I'd never heard of.
Medium.
Medium?
Yeah.
They're all kind of do the same thing, but that's the kind of the funny thing with Substack was that I saw a lot of famous people on there, and I don't buy into much of that anyway. But it just looked kind of neat, like quite simplistic and neat. I kind of like the fact that you don't have to customize too much.
Exactly.
You can make it yours without confusing yourself.
Yeah, that's also what I realized with all my. I'm the person that gets a bit bogged down in the customization side before making anything live, and I actually had to just sort of kick myself or just stop myself from getting in my own way.
And totally.
Just to let the content speak for itself, and so far I'm really, really enjoying it. But let me move on to the next question before before I get distracted too much. So I think we covered a bit of the weather aspect and why you're interested in that and why you're writing about that, which is quite cool. The one thing I would like to also get to know a bit about your photography. That's been something that you've done for a long time?
Yeah, a long time. Every time like ever since I've been traveling, when I've left school, and my folks kind of put me on an excursion to New Zealand when I was leaving school, or actually during school. It was actually during school, and a camera went with me, and got some amazing shots that, I look back on and just go, wow, like that's where I've come from. Like, it's quite humbling, but also quite evocative as well. The way, yeah, I mean, you can make a moment stand in time just by taking a photo, and something that you'll treasure forever. And when you travel, it's, you've got this heightened sensitivity when you're traveling, and being able to take things in. Probably not so much in your own circumstance with kids, but because it's obviously mayhem. But ever since I've traveled, I've always had a camera with me. Although I'm not a travel photographer, it's just something that's always been part of me. Is shooting new horizons, and people as well.
If I can interrupt you actually, you actually mentioned on your website that you started originally with film photography.
Yeah, still do it.
Oh, well, wait for a minute. Sorry, I'm getting a notification here. I'm not sure how. Okay, wait. So we got 9 minutes. We can always restart the meeting, but
no worries.
So you started film photography. Yeah.
Dad got me into that late 90s, and as I say, lots of traveling came in after that, after I left school. So I always had a film camera with me, and it started on film. And then when I moved to London, I spent an incredible amount of time developing film. A lot of people would ask me if I had a darkroom. You don't need a darkroom to develop film. All you need is a change bag to change it into your. If you've got a photography background, you probably understand that. But a lot of people often wonder where my darkroom is. It's just in a bag, and then you can, once it's in that canister, you can develop it, and then I often scan it in.
You need a darkroom if you want to make prints.
Exactly. Yeah, you need room and darkroom if you want to make prints. Exactly. And I do the horrible thing to film photography by scanning it. I know it's it's a horrible thing.
Well, I think that's how most people get their film photography out there now. I mean, you have to.
That's right. It's inherent. Like, I don't know any. I mean, there's definitely some developers that, and I'm talking film development, that do printing, and it is a fine art craft. And they're very nichey, and you pay for it, which is amazing. But I mean, the level of digital technology these days is just unsurpassed, and you can replicate that quite easily, in my opinion. Having printed a lot, I know all too well that you can emulate film quite easily on digital these days.
Yeah. And then on that note, I also started on film back in there. I mean, I had a dark room in the little room under the stairs in one of our old houses.
Yeah.
So I made prints and developed my film and stuff. And then at university with the photography club, we had a dark room. So different time. But and coming back to your traveling and saying, that how that heightened sense of awareness, and how when you capture something on film, I think back in that time when we were growing up, and sort of those late 90s, early 2000s, where if you take a photograph, like you said, it's a moment captured in time, and it lasts forever. Whereas we now have AI generated imagery, blah blah blah. Not to go down that rabbit hole too deep, but how does that? What's your sort of take on that? For just an opinion, like how's it?
Yeah, my opinion is that there's something special about film photography in the sense that uh, when you take the photo, you're not distracted by the photo on the back of a camera.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
think that
Yeah,
there's something in that certainly experience that in places that are so far fetched and people expect to either see digital or they expect to see film. I traveled to Kyrgyzstan in 2017 and shot a whole bunch of like a series of photos that was all on film. I didn't take a digital camera. Um,
wow.
and the connection you have with people instantly on film. A lot of the people want to see the photo on the
Yeah,
back because that's what
I
they
can
expect,
imagine the looks on
especially
their
in
faces.
2017. And they like, you turn the camera around, they're like, "What? Hang on, where's the photo?" They're looking in it and
Yeah,
don't understand. But it's an incredible talking point. When you're carrying around film and you're shooting on film, you're able to slow it down. You're not
yeah,
distracted by the it's like
yeah.
walking
It's
into a room with a television, right? Like the first thing you look at is the television. So
yeah,
you're just removing that altogether. And it's just so pure. To shoot on film is just something special. And then at the end of it you get photos back a month later, or you could do it the next week or whatever, but I'm never usually that disciplined. And you get them back and you're just equally as surprised and you're just blown away by the imagery that you've got. You get to relive
yeah,
that moment. So
yeah.
it's
Like
such
you
a
like,
special feeling.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, like you say, you're so much more connected to the moment because you visualizing what you're photographing in your mind, how it's going to turn out. But once you click the shutter, you back in the moment, or you're still in the moment. Whereas with
Yeah.
a digital camera, like you mentioned, everyone now wants to see, or you're also looking quickly. You can see what it's like, or retake
Adjustments.
it, or
Yeah.
adjustments, etc. Yeah, yeah. So and
Yeah.
it's amazing to see how it's been. The whole situation has been flipped on its head, where we went from film photography being the norm, and then in the digital age, when that came along, it was weird to take a photo and look on the back of the camera. Whereas now that's the norm, and the opposite is true. Where if you don't look on the back of the camera, it's a bit weird. So yeah,
It
it's,
is, yeah. And just to add to that, like I'll often watch people probably out of judgment, watch people take a photo and then spend, more time looking at the back of it and,
yeah,
like trying to work out what's going on with it and histograms and
yeah,
things like that, that I'm just
yeah,
like, wow, you just killed the moment.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, you notice that as parents as well, where especially living far apart from well, originally from my wife's parents here in Switzerland, and now from my parents in South Africa, where on family outings, one of us are quite often, have the phone between us and our son or whatever we're doing, because we want to share the memories and share the moments. But that ends up actually being a little bit of a barrier as well, on a more
Yeah,
on the physical and the more philosophical level. And that, yeah, it's interesting. Um, yeah,
I,
yeah,
I,
I
I
mean,
shoot on medium format as well, for a lot
okay,
of
wow,
portrait stuff. And so
awesome,
you're usually looking down unless you've got a prism to look through
yeah,
it. But the ability to have a waist level viewfinder
mm,
looking at your subject is an awesome tool because you're able to have a conversation. You've set the camera
yeah,
up, even on a
yeah,
tripod, whatever, and
yeah,
then so you've set up the shot, and then you're actually looking at the person. Um,
hmm,
and so that's what I did a lot. Spent a lot of time in Kyrgyzstan, kind of enjoying and finessing was having that conversation, having that moment, and getting them candid and relaxed to
yeah,
then to be able to shoot that shot. Um,
yeah. I
you can do
mean,
that with digital, and you can shoot off 100 frames, and you'll get one out of it. But there's something about just having a genuine conversation with someone before you're taking a
yeah, and
photo.
that connection, that rapport that you build up with that person in that time, also adds to the intimacy of the portrait in a lot of the cases, or um,
100%, yeah.
yeah,
You can see that in a photo. You only have
yeah,
to look at a photo for a split second. You go, wow, that's an
yeah,
incredible moment. She could be been
and that
able to capture it.
exactly, and a lot of that work actually was not taking of the photo. It was the what happened before, leading up to it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that was quite cool. Sorry, listen, I'm just quickly looking at this timer.
Yeah, no, you're right. I can see it there.
I'm gonna. I've got still.
Flick us another link.
Yeah, should we do that? If you don't mind.
Yeah, man. Yeah, of course.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm gonna end this quickly and just make sure everything's fine. I'm gonna send you another link in a moment.
Sounds good.
Right. Carrying on. Where were we? Film photography. Yeah. That actually brought me on to another interesting aspect, or something I want to ask you about is where you did in 2017 the film photography in Kyrgyzstan.
Mm-hmm.
That must be a very, very interesting part of the world to travel to.
Yeah, it is. It's a awesome part of the world, and I encourage anyone to go and see it and spend their money in places like that. They've had an interesting history behind them. They're kind of squished between China and the stands. They obviously are a stand, but they're not.
Yeah.
Because anytime you mention Kyrgyzstan to someone, they're like, "Oh, what is it? Is it that next to that war-torn Afghanistan?"
Yeah.
So it's incredibly safe. The people are incredibly beautiful to meet, and hospitality-wise, and food is incredible. It's such for me, who comes from Australia, a Western civilization, visiting a place like that, yeah, they're on their way to being westernized and developed as well, but it's still got that Russian influence, and they speak Russian. I don't know. I'm obviously not aware of how things have gone since the Russian-Ukraine thing. I'm not sure how much influence. There's always been a little bit of civil unrest from local people to have that autonomy from Russia. So there was a big uprising in sort of the mid-noughties that was kind of fighting against being under the tyrannic rule of Russia, and just being autonomous, really. But I never saw any of that. It was categorically none of that at all. Although our local authorities said to maintain distance and do not provoke or do not be involved in or participate in rallies and stuff like that, obviously. But yeah, I didn't see any of that anyway. But it's an incredible country. They call it the Switzerland of East Asia. So,
really?
for a reason. Wow. The mountains are matched or do match Switzerland. I've been to both countries and explored both extensively, and they're very, very similar in terms of terrain.
Yeah, that part of the world, I mean, that for me, it's sort of always been sort of the outer part of the travel radar. But since living more now in Western Europe, a bit more front and center. Well, not center maybe, but more a bit more in the front, or more aware of it, especially. And like I think like you alluded to a few minutes ago, it's sort of a bit of a black hole in many people's geographical knowledge. Kyrgyzstan, the Kingdom of Bhutan, Mongolia. That's really a part of the world that not a lot of people are. Maybe they're aware of it a little bit, but either they're not aware of it, or if they are, it's just by name, not necessarily know the people and the geography and what it's like to travel there. And I'm certainly one who I've read up a little bit on the different regions, and I mean that's definitely a part where I would love to travel to. In my bachelor days, I would have gone without the drop of a hat. But now, if or when I do go, or we do go, maybe as a family, then one of the things that crosses my mind is safety. Obviously, nowhere ever going to be 100% safe. You can never guarantee anyone's safety anywhere. But that is a little bit of an unknown factor there. So, if I do travel there at some stage, I would love to. I don't know if it'll be with or as a solo trip. I mean, Mongolia is definitely very high on the to-do list or on the travel list. As these countries a little bit closer to home, maybe more a bit for skiing, like countries like Romania, Slovenia. I mean, those are
Georgia.
very, very...
Have you looked into Georgia?
I haven't actually, and that's actually, I recently saw some very nice stuff on Georgia in terms of skiing and winter, and it looks really, really cool.
I've always wanted to go to Georgia.
Oh, okay.
No, no, I've actually not done. Sorry, I mentioned it as East Asia, but it's Central Asia. But that Central Asian region, it's so untapped for snow, I think. And I mean, it has the same complexities with picking the snow conditions, but yeah, I mean, there's some incredible mountains in Georgia and Azerbaijan, and like all of those places are just so incredible for mountains. Even China,
like China for sure. I mean, I'm sure Russia also in some regions, but
yeah,
I think traveling to those countries, at least in my limited experience, I mean, we have a lot of, like, speaking of data, we have a lot of data in Europe, and we have avalanche reports, we have key reports, we have
too much data,
a lot of data to be able to, well, at least that makes planning a quick ski tour or winter activities where you have to be aware of things like avalanche conditions and snow conditions, makes it, well, one, safer, and two, a lot more convenient. I think for a lot of the travel I've seen to places like Romania or Slovenia, maybe as well, or Georgia, I think you'd have to rely heavily on guides essentially, or what do you think?
Yeah, experience and knowledge. I mean, if you can dig a pit and you can read, the snowpack, then you're good to go. Like, obviously, you just need to have an understanding of what that is, though. But yeah, I mean, if you're looking backcountry, 100%, you're gonna have to rely on a lot of locals, and some of them probably don't even go backcountry. They think you're absolutely bananas to go out that way. There's a perfectly good lift behind me. Why don't you use that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people in Switzerland ask the same question.
Yeah. But such incredible terrain when you put skins on, like
it's a completely different world. I mean, for someone like myself, I don't know what you're skiing. It's actually a question maybe I can ask an hour. We can sort of get to that eventually. I mean, I come from a country with, as a novelty, there's a small ski, you can call it a resort or a small ski village, but I mean, for all practical purposes, it's skiing is something far removed from growing up in South Africa. We have surfing, we have sailing, we have etc. But
same here.
So someone like myself, then getting exposed to skiing, it's always been sort of this thing you see in movies or in magazines and you read about and you see on television, but then actually getting to experience it, first learning, and then skiing on piste, and then sort of by chance getting introduced to backcountry skiing or ski touring. Excuse me. And then having that sort of innate, coming from a lot of travel and enjoying some, adventures and wilderness hiking and just being out in nature, the backcountry skiing or the ski touring really appealed to me, and that's sort of where then I realized, wow, this is actually this is like, for me, this is sort of the ultimate pinnacle of moving through the mountains in the winter on skins under your own power. And that's sort of where I then focus all my skiing, all my my skiing energy and adventures and endeavors. But I always joke with friends of us here in Switzerland, because I mean, like our son as well. You start to ski when you're 2 years old. It's just, especially if you in Switzerland, if you live a bit further, if you live out of the mountains, like down towards Bern, Zurich, it's a yearly holiday thing. But if you live here where we are in the mountains, it's part of life. You can put the skis down, outside the house and head into the backcountry if you want to, depending on snow conditions. This year has been especially atrocious, as you are probably quite well aware of. But when I learned to ski, it was you'd have in the so here we have like a children, like each little ski region or a bigger ski region would have, at each lift they have like little children's areas or like a beginner area. It's got like a little magic carpet or like a
Yeah.
little lift that you
Yeah.
go up. And I always joke with people, when I learned to ski, I was like, it was a 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 35-year-old, 2-year-old, 3-year-old. And so it was quite humbling in many ways. And it's nice to have seen the growth both personally and skill wise. But in Switzerland, I mean, I don't know what's your ski background? Was it something you did as a family? Did you do it from a young age, or you also started later?
In Oz, oh man, like that was the thing. I grew up in Perth. There is no snow in the state of
Yeah.
Western Australia at all. I mean, you occasionally get it with a pretty weird system, but it's all on the East Coast. And when it does come in the East Coast, we're talking 3 months of the year is the season, as far as the resorts are concerned. But I reckon you can take a month off that anyway, because it's all marketing. And so effectively, we've only got like 2 months of the lifted season, and then we probably only have maximum 2 months backcountry of spring corn that you're earning your turns for. So it's very, very small, and that's on a good year too. We had we had a pretty mediocre season last year, and I only got down there like a handful of times. It's a 6-hour drive for me here in Sydney, so it's not something I do with family, because I didn't do that growing up, and I don't have kids, so I mean that allows me to kind of strike mission and go when the conditions are good. But we're literally only talking, there's 2 months of pickable good snow, and I'd say good snow because Australia's snow is obviously a lot lower, like less quality than a lot of places like Europe and the US. So it's not blower power, but you still can have like the freeze levels remain quite low diurnally, so throughout the day. There's only about 2 months of that, so August, probably late July through to start of September, which is our winter. And then after that, it's all spring. It's all spring snow, so it's all corn. And you're really only going to that high elevation stuff, which Australia doesn't have a hell of a lot of. They top out the mountain tops out here at 2,200, so 2,200 meters, 664 feet, I think, 6,400 feet, approximately. So it's very low. And you get huge freeze thaw cycles. So
so it pays to go sort of early
just
in the day, and then wait for a little bit later, and when it thaws to ski down if you can.
Sometimes not even that, Cornelius. Like you can be out there at 9 o'clock and it'd be already done. And done in the sense that it's already ready to go. Spring snow, like it's thawed out. Right through the layer.
That's something for me. Again, here in Switzerland, often, I mean, like, I often do early morning or evening missions, and in the early part of this winter, that's fine, or that's great, because I mean, you're skiing great snow, but you're skiing it in complete darkness. Or the full moon is actually on the full moon is actually quite, it's remarkably
that's
light.
amazing.
You still need a headlamp for the ski down, but on the skin up, I often just switch my headlamp off and just skin on the moonlight, which is really
and
cool.
Isn't that the best feeling in the world? Hey, like honestly, there's no sound. I mean, obviously you probably get the wind, but like it's just you, honestly, that's it. And you can just stop for a second. All you hear is your heartbeat. Like it's an incredible feeling.
There's a special moment, no, for sure. Like that's something that stays with you for a lifetime. Doesn't matter how many times you do it.
And I will say, it's one thing that got me onto your Substack, because there was that photo of you skinning up in I don't know if it's if it was you. It might have you took it, I think. So
Yeah,
well, I don't know if it was on a tripod or whatever, but it was in darkness and it was just you and your headlamp, and that's like it was just that when I saw that, I was just like, wow,
yeah. Okay,
that's
cool.
what it's like.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was, yeah. I think once I think I can't remember if you first you commented on one of my posts or you subscribed and then commented, but yeah. I mean, it's like if you when you start and and someone subscribes or comments, you're like, wow, this is amazing. Someone actually read
Connection,
this,
yeah.
yeah, the stuff I wrote. They can relate, which is, I mean, again, which is such a bonus on top of just getting the stuff that you want to share out there, because that's and I often think about that actually, like if and I think for us coming from the even the pre-internet era, pre-social media, pre sharing all the stuff online,
Digital.
yeah, pre-digital, I would be doing this stuff anyway. It's not like I do it because I want to share it. I want to share it because I'm doing it. And if
Yeah,
everything
100%.
had to fall away, I would
Love
still
that.
go out there and do it, whether it's on film or not at all. Photographically, I would still go skiing, go touring, and most likely dig my film cameras back out and start that and start that up. Yeah, no, that's something that's really really special. And but what I actually wanted to get onto was the spring. So as you get into spring, that early morning, ski touring becomes quite interesting, because even on weekends, if I'm not working, or sometimes I work weekends and I've got days off in the week, with family time, I don't have the luxury of going up and waiting for the thaw. So quite often I'm skiing very dodgy snow on the way down. I don't know I mean, in English, I think quite a descriptive word for it in Swiss German, but in English, or in American English, at least I think they call it punch crust. When it's that thin frozen layer on top, but when you ski, you break through it, and it just sort of you can't. It's almost impossible to ski. It's like because it's like a thin layer of hard snow, and then when you
Yeah.
break through, it's soft below, but so it just grabs onto the ski, and you can't really make a turn, where you have to really ski and adjust and feel how the snow is changing under your feet, because it hasn't thawed yet. And yeah, so that makes it quite interesting sometimes. It also makes you
In
a better.
Oz, sorry,
Yeah.
go on.
No,
I
no,
was just
so
gonna say, in Oz, it's usually rain affected, and that's what happens. You get
yeah,
a lot of rain cycles
yeah,
through Oz, and you might get a snowstorm, and then it's followed by a warm spell, and you get this kind of that exactly the punch crust, or the upside down snowpack. It can be dangerous, but Oz is generally pretty solidified by that stage, and
okay,
you're not going to be pushing down slopes or anything like that. But
yeah,
it's a nightmare to ski on. That and Sastrugi is like common. It's all wind
yeah,
scoured.
yeah,
Yeah, it's horrible to ski on.
yeah. And yeah, but as I like to say, or maybe it's just to what's the word, to not to sue, but to sort of uh, the word is escaping me, to sort of to soothe myself, as in I always like to say, it makes you a better skier. When you if
Yeah,
you
oh, for
I
sure.
was when I was growing up, there was, surfing. There's always the guys who they always go with the competition surfing. I was never really a competition surfer, but I had friends and family, and my sister actually surfed a lot of competitions, and a lot of guys would often go out surfing when it was howling onshore 1 foot waves, because in competitions you don't have the luxury to wait for the perfect waves, and if you can surf good in
No,
crappy conditions,
yeah,
it's easy to surf well, and when the waves are perfect offshore, 4 to 6 foot. So yeah, so I like to
it's when I
at
like
least
to surf because no one's ever out.
that as well. Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, so yeah, and um, that's one of the interesting parts of trying to get some skiing in when between work and work life
Sometimes you don't
and
have a
family life.
choice.
Yeah, exactly. Um, Cool. So, what did I made some notes here actually? Yeah, it's about the surfing. So Australia is obviously not far from Indo. Is that a
Yeah.
place? Is that a place you visited often for surfing?
Um, Admittingly, it wasn't when I was growing up. I didn't do a lot of international. Well, I didn't start surfing outside of Australia until I'd left school. I went on a
Okay.
trip to New Zealand. Sorry, to Indonesia in 2000. I want to say like 2002, 2003. Did a
Okay.
boat trip under the from Bali, as it's the easiest to access, and through Lombok and
Mm.
into Sambala. And then
Okay.
it kind of kicked off my interest and love for Indonesia. It's such an incredible place, so unique
Yeah.
for waves as well. And then I've done a bunch of trips ever since. The Mentawai Islands
Okay.
are the obvious ones.
Yeah.
And those islands are getting quite busy. I think it's a little bit of a concern with the amount of people that are going to those places because
Okay.
there's not infrastructure to support it. And we're talking people on boats, but I mean,
Yeah.
marine traffic or otherwise, it still
Mm.
has an impact. But yeah, I've been north of there to the Penang Islands. Sorry, it's actually south of there, so it's the bottom of Sumatra, which is
Okay.
the
Yeah.
northern island of Indonesia.
Yeah.
And then last year, as well, off the beaten track, I went to a place called Simalu.
Okay. Haven't heard.
And yeah, it's on the northern peninsula. Oh, sorry, the northern region of Sumatra.
Okay.
And Aceh, where this 2004 or might be 2005 actually tsunami
Mm-hmm.
happened.
Oh,
The big
okay.
one.
Wow.
That was through the Aceh region. So although it
Sure.
wasn't Simalu itself,
Mm-hmm.
Simalu actually sat on the fault line that gave way. So
Okay.
Simalu actually sank 8 meters one side, and the other side lifted eight
Lifted.
meters. So
Wow.
it literally pivoted that the whole island chain pivoted that amount, which
Mm.
displaced the water and caused a tsunami.
Okay.
So and created all these surf
Yeah.
breaks there that we can't talk about because you just shouldn't go there. And
Okay.
but yeah, there's a lot of waves there, and it's
Okay.
pretty remote Indo.
Yeah.
Lots
So
of fun
boat
places.
only. Boat only there mostly.
No, it's an island, so most people staying on land camps.
Oh, really?
There's a
Okay.
bunch of camps there, yeah,
Oh, okay.
and they're they're not super remote. The camps, like there's uh, plenty of civilization there,
Mm.
and you can fly in there quite accessibly.
Okay.
But generally, you're on a moped or on a boat, taking a boat out to some of those islands that
Just some of the break.
kind of have some of the breaks. Yeah,
Mm.
exactly.
Okay. Wow. Awesome. So, and are you taking a selection of boards, or what do you generally surf in terms of boards?
Yeah, I mean that's the other thing as well. Airlines will sting you for whatever they can these days. So I take anywhere from 2 to 3 boards. Any more than that's just additional admin that you probably don't want to deal with.
Mm.
And but yeah, 2 or 3 boards. I took 3 boards last year. I don't like traveling with boards. It's just so
Yeah,
it's kind of restricting.
yeah.
So the less boards, the better.
Mm.
But that's not always possible when you go to places like Indo that has a selection of waves.
Yeah.
But yeah, I took last year. I took a twin and then 2 traditional performance boards. So your short boards, the
Mm-hmm.
thruster short
Okay.
boards.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was more than enough, to be honest. One was a gun board, so one was for the bigger
Okay.
stuff,
For
and
bigger,
then
for bigger
one
waves.
was yeah, and then one was just an everyday board. So I try to cover all gamut.
And they're back home. You have a bigger selection, or
Yeah. It's, yeah, and my garage probably looks like yours behind you. Just replace the skis with boards, with
With boards,
surfboards,
okay.
and they're all up on a wall. And then I
Wow,
just take
awesome.
a pick from. To be honest, I've got way too many boards, and I don't need that many
No
boards in my
such thing.
life.
No such thing.
Yeah, well, just more money and complexity if you're moving.
Yeah, yeah, true, true. But yeah, yeah. I mean, when we moved to Switzerland, obviously I had to get rid or gift my boards, which I ended up giving to my sister. Because here, yeah, I mean,
I think that technically means that you can get them back.
I could get, yeah. I mean, they're not exactly. Actually, I surfed one a little bit when we were back in South Africa last November, but yeah, I could definitely, yeah. So I mean, I've got free reign or free use of them when we are back there, which is nice. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's nice to know that someone who appreciates them or using them. But yeah, something I mean, as a business aside. So I think with the surfing, when I ended up, especially early on in my surfing life, I always surfed for performance shortboards because that's what you thought. I mean, that's what the pro surfed, and that's what we wanted to surf. And then later on, a bit like my skis, which is why I have so many skis back here, is I started much more enjoying a lot more to surf different types of boards. Like I had like yeah, different types of varieties of 9-foot longboards, gliders, 9.4, 8,
Wow.
6, 9-foot, and like a couple of different twin
Mid-length.
yeah, more shorts and like 5.6 or 6.1 fish twin fins, but with nice volume, you know, that they
So
float
fun.
nicely. And then I had
Yeah.
one of my favorite boards of all time was a little a mini Simmons, which looked like it's like really short. It's like five. It's almost like a long bodyboard or a short surfboard, but it's really wide, a
Yeah, I
lot
was
of
gonna say,
volume
does it look like
around
an
us.
egg? Like it's
Almost,
yeah,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
quite
yeah, like
round.
that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But
It's fun.
the amazing thing about that board is it's super short, but it because of the volume and I don't know if it's the dimensions, the way the shape, it serves like a longboard, but you can turn it. So when you're paddling, because of
Yeah.
the volume, you can paddle fast. You can really catch a wave early, and once you're up, oh, you can float over those flat sections on waves when you do have them, but you can
Yeah.
still turn it when you have the you know the more yeah just more of a wave to work with. It was really fun. It's a really fun board. I would recommend anyone to try to try mini
Easy to
summons.
get onto and enjoy it. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that and then actually I started realizing, or I mean, at least for me, a lot of the early part of my surfing life, you know, because you see that here when we go to certain parts of the coast, like Italy or when we're back home in South Africa now, you know, if you're only surfing short performance type boards, which a lot of the young guys are, you know, when you're paddling out when it's 2 or 3 foot, you're just paddling out and you're not really having a lot of fun. But if you got a 9-foot longboard or a mini Simmons, you can actually surf. And often in those conditions, a lot of people either don't go out or they don't catch a lot of waves because they're not really surfing the right board for the conditions or for them. And
Mm.
yeah, and in that sense, I think it's there's a bit of a not a gap, but there's a bit of a disservice being done to a lot of the surfing industry by not just making people more aware of those different types of boards that can actually be so much more fun depending on the conditions. Or maybe that's just my experience. I don't know. You know.
Yeah, no, I agree. Over COVID, people went on a massive spending spree here because they weren't traveling on boards and camping equipment. And just the amount of boards that were sold here is mind-boggling. So I think that there's something to be said there on a second-hand market in Australia, like with all of those kinds of boards to be able to try and test. You can pick them
Yeah.
up pretty cheaply. Yeah, once you tap that you know, that resource of different boards, like you really broaden your scope on surfing and your ability to, yeah, it's a big win if you get it right.
Yeah, it's a bit in many ways a bit like when you're traveling, and then you know when you initially start traveling, your mind just immediately opens up, and you just become aware of so much more that's going on in the world, and
Yeah.
you just realize how small your own world has been for such a long time. But yeah, that's yeah, that's I think why traveling is actually so intoxicating in many ways. But
Yeah.
moving on quickly, just yeah, last couple of questions. So for yourself, any goals going forward besides everything you have going on at the moment?
Yeah, probably too much. Yeah, I mean, I want to continue to bridge that gap between meteorological, technical chat and that just breaking it down for the layman.
Hmm.
I thoroughly enjoy being able to have that skill and resources to kind of pull it all together and work out whether the surf's on or the snow's on, or how to tackle it if it is poor conditions. Or a lot of people, there's been in the past, recent past, a lot of people have come to me and asked me, what do you think about these conditions? Because they know that I've got an interest in it.
Yeah.
And then half an hour later, when I'm still chewing their ear off, they regret it. But yeah, my goals and aspirations in that regard is just to continue it on and constantly provide updates on and not without kind of being generic, like a weatherman. Is
Mhm.
kind of getting into the detail of whether it be snowpack or it could be surf, but I don't spend a lot of time looking at surf. I got that at the front door, and I just surf whatever I can. But when it
Yeah.
comes to snow, and I've got a big interest in that, the cryosphere, and how climate's changing.
Okay.
I'm very keen to kind of explore that more, and that's why my studies are
Yeah.
aligned that way.
Okay. Um, yeah, I mean, you're mentioning the surf and the snow, and I think for me, having surfing having been such a big part of my life growing up, and having now sort of having to, I don't want to say give it up, but at least in the sense of living here, give it up temporarily or for however long amount of time. And one thing I've actually found, especially with ski touring or backcountry skiing, is for me, I've been drawing a lot of similarities between that and surfing, in the sense of, with surfing, if you want to really be, keep your finger on the pulse of, you know, what the swell is doing, what the wind is doing, which spots on the coast are going to be good depending on the orientation, what the weather systems are doing further out in the ocean, pushing the swell towards the shore, and knowing which spots work on certain directions of swell, etc., etc. And I find the same very interesting and exciting also with ski touring, having to figure out that what is the snow doing? Has it been it snowed? Is it going to be warm the next day or soon after? Is it staying cold? The time of year, is the snow warming up and then freezing, and then is it going to thaw? Is it going to stay cold? So it's going to stay powder. And snow in essence is also water. It's just another form. So you're also analyzing that type of stuff in a similar way to surfing. So in a way, it's just sort of shifted to a different medium, but it's still that inherent um, analysis or something that's also a very cool aspect of surfing, and both backcountry skiing for me.
Yeah. There's also something about, I don't know, looking at something you can't see. And that
Yeah,
sounds paradoxical, but the atmosphere does some weird and wonderful things, and I've often, when it comes to the mountain regions and terrain, I've always wondered why,
mm-hmm.
atmospherically, and one of the things that blew me away when I first travelled to a place like New Zealand, my first snow experience, I'd never experienced snow before, just got to New Zealand, caught this bus up the mountain, Mount Ruapehu on the North Island, quite unassuming place for snow, until you see the mountain, and it's incredible. You get up the top, and I got off the bus, and it's just this, the alpine air just hit me, and I was just, and I guess that was kind of my introduction for my love for the alpine region and
Okay.
mountain, is just that cold air.
Yeah, that's
You know, the stuff
yeah.
that you get when you open the freezer on a hot day, you know, but like
Yeah.
I'm literally flew across the continent to enjoy it. And yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
That was my introduction was incredible like that. It's honestly, it was like a love.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that's something. Yeah, I mean, as a South African as well, I can definitely relate to that. Also, I always have it. It's always so funny. You know, I mean, I worked also a little bit various different roles and stuff. Being from a small coastal village that's all a lot reliant on tourism, and you always have, you know, when you have European tourists, it's always the funniest thing, and they always at a restaurant or wherever it is later on when you live in Stellenbosch at a wine farm, they always want to sit in the sun and have their lunch or drink their wine.
Yeah.
And as someone who's from Africa or a very sunny country, probably like Western Australia or Sydney, Australia as well, you're always like, that doesn't make any sense. They're going to burn to an absolute crisp. And then, and now living here in Switzerland, you can almost start. I can actually see that side of I can view things a bit from their perspective. Where especially here in the mountains and the valleys, you know, you get daylight, but you see direct sunlight only, especially in the winter, very late in the day, and then it disappears very quickly. So, can you? Am I frozen on your side? The video.
Oh
You see
yeah.
me? You see me moving?
No, you are frozen. Yeah.
Okay, at least the sound's going. Okay, well let's continue at least with the audio because it's only got a couple of minutes left. And then
no worries.
And then how I can sort of understand how they want to sit in the sun, and always joke with them and say, for me, it's always in growing up in South Africa or later on in South Africa, it's the exact opposite. Where for us, like you were mentioning earlier with your alpine experience with snow, I mean, we literally have people, if it's snowing on mountains in the close vicinity, especially around Stellenbosch, a bit further inland, or in the mountains immediately surrounding Stellenbosch, you know, people would take the day off work to go look at snow. That's literally a thing,
right?
And here, and my wife especially also, she can never, and it's like, why do you want to go look at snow? It's something it's normal. It's snow, you know. But if you don't know it, and the same with the sun, you know, we know sun so well. For them, it's something very, very cool and unique because they don't get a lot of it.
Yeah.
Always
I'm like
so
a
funny.
kid if I see snow. I'm all over it, and
for sure.
you know, I think, and maybe it's your upbringing, you know, where you're not exposed to it. And it's funny, you talk to people that are places like Northern America or you know North America right up top, and they're like, no, snow is like the worst thing ever. It's horrible to drive in. You got to leave the house with a jacket on, and you know it's a complete inconvenience. Where I'm like, put me in a jacket. Let's go up the top of that mountain.
Yeah, no problem whatsoever. It does add. I mean, here with shoveling snow in winter does add a bit of extra admin, but like I think also I didn't grow because I didn't grow up with it. I don't really mind it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think on that note, should we end it there? I mean, I would love to pick it up again at some stage. It's been awesome chatting to you and to get to know you a bit better.
Yeah, likewise.
See each other in person.
Yeah.
And thanks so much for taking the time. Really, really appreciate it. Just keep on. I think just keep on doing what you're doing. I love reading what you're writing, and or love hearing about the countries you've been to. A little bit jealous in that sense, but I think that's just life. And like I mentioned, if you ever head this way, let me know.
Yeah, Cornelius, thank you so much for having me. It's as I said at the start, you know, I feel humbled that the request came through, and I appreciate your interest in what I do, but it's got to come back to you as well. I've got an instant connection with your publications through your photography, and you know, your even your touring. Incredibly jealous on that regard as well. So I guess the feeling's mutual. And really nice to meet you too, and I'd like to maybe flesh it out in the future a bit more. And so
for sure,
you're open to it, happy to jump on for sure.
But
thank you so much for having me, mate.
Awesome. Yeah, very humbled with your time, and yeah, enjoy your Friday there. I'm gonna have a quick glass of wine with the wife, and then I'll head to bed.
I'm off to rock climbing, so completely different.
Awesome. Awesome.
All
Enjoy.
right,
We'll
mate,
catch
yeah.
up soon.
Thanks, mate.
Okay.
Great to meet
Ciao.
you.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Bye.
See ya.